Thanks, Jill. We are almost at half time. Coffee is on its way, but before we wrap up the first half of this morning, how do you establish and scale a customer data platform within an enterprise organization? What does a CDP Centre of Excellence look like? And what structure, process, and outcomes need to be put in place in order to ensure successful onboarding and ongoing adoption? These are not easy questions to answer because I don't think there is necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach to CDP, and how you organise around the tech depends on a number of factors, such as the use cases you're trying to prioritise, the ownership of data, tech and channels across various departments. So that's what we're going to be exploring in this session. My name is Debbie Barnes. I work with some of our largest brands here at Telium, and I am thrilled that we have Martin Winter from Tryg, Gareth Perkins from Vodafone Business, and James O'Keefe from Legal & General, all joining me on stage today to share their experiences of adopting customer data platform technology within their organisations. So thank you very much for agreeing to take part in this panel. Before we get started, here is a 60-second snapshot of the brands that we have represented here on stage today. First question, guys, is why did your organisation choose to implement a CDP initially? Did this initiative form part of a wider digital transformation? And did you see any kind of cultural shift as a result? Martin, you kick us off.
I think our main reason to use a CDP was never around the CDP itself, but around building particular things that we wanted to achieve. So we have always been about making use cases work rather than implementing a CDP as such. So in many cases, I think the conversation hasn't been around implementing, it has been about achieving something in particular. And I think one of the major shifts that it caused nonetheless in terms of our mindset was around real-time data streaming. When we first had conversations with you and you mentioned real-time capabilities, my first notion was like, we're 300 years old, literally. Tryg was founded in 1730 something, right? We have business processes that would make Soviet bureaucracy look like a race car, literally. So what are you on about with real time, right? But as it turns out, we don't get to see our customers that often. You don't come to your insurance company for fun, right? So when you're finally there, we need to be ready. And as it turned out, some of our first use cases actually utilized real-time capabilities, and some of the best use cases that we have that are immensely valuable to us utilize the real-time capability, and some of them wouldn't work at all if it weren't for the ability to react on data in real time.
I guess some of that probably resonates with you as well, James.
Absolutely. So we had an intentionally very narrow band use case for a CDP initially as part of a transformation. So our transformation was to become more data-led, tech-enabled, and customer experience focused. The CDP use case that was narrowband for us was very much around that third-party cookie signal loss. We had been burnt by GDPR. There were plentiful signals out in the market beforehand for us to really target specific audiences with very specific needs at specific times. So for us, having that narrowband use case initially meant that we could do something that was well within our control. We could drive it at pace, and we weren't going to suffer that kind of death by 1,000 sponsors. So we knew that this was extensible. We knew that there were more use cases that we would unlock in time, but we wanted to get going really quickly, prove the value, get the return on investment, and establish Telium as a really positive brand in our organisation that then would open the door for further engagement. So it was a real important thing for us to get that focus early on.
And Gareth, for you, the consumer side of the business had implemented CDP first, and then Vodafone Business then implemented after that.
Yeah, so we had green shoots on the consumer side. We looked at what they were doing. So our plan was to quickly adopt and scale that across our Vodafone business units. We really wanted to focus on driving as much value as we can off the CDP, and then also use that to drive some excellent customer experiences across some of our complex journeys. So yeah, we've scaled that across now 6 of our Vodafone business markets, and we'll look to roll out some more across the next financial year.
I love that your focus for initially implementing the CDP was all around customer experience as well. That was the primary focus. Second question, what structure, processes and outcomes did you initially establish during implementation, and how did they then evolve as the rollout scaled? Gareth, I'll come back to you for this one.
Yeah, so from a communication perspective, we focused on core pillars around the CDP. So focused on core sales, churn reduction, customer experience, and then assisting customers through complex sales journeys. On Vodafone Business, some of the sales can get quite complex for customers. So where we can use the CDP to help push customers along that journey, we found that pretty useful. I think from the initial perspective, we focused on getting off the ground first. So focusing on some of the small quick wins, so looking at digital to digital use cases, looking at some kind of paid media use cases as well. But then I think once we got into the flow and the structure, we needed that G word, so governance around everything. So we had a lot of governance frameworks set up to make sure that we facilitate the knowledge sharing across the markets and also any reusability opportunities that there were.
And Martin, it's been quite a long time since you implemented the CDP now. But yeah, how did you find it initially? I know you wanted to work in a more agile type of way.
Well, some of the cases we built to begin with, really, the first ones are still the most valuable ones that we have today. And they are still running strong, and we're looking to, or we have exported those to different markets. So the usual way we work is to build one thing in one place and then watch it grow legs and wander around the business, and getting adoption elsewhere as well. And that process has worked really well because it scales down the effort initially, and means that you can iterate and invent in a small session or a small setting to get things working. And once you got it working, it's easy to copy paste it to other places as well.
Interesting. And James, I wanted to ask you specifically, did you decide a centre of excellence was necessary for legal in general? And if so, how did it contribute towards a successful implementation and ongoing adoption?
Yeah, it wasn't an intentional thing at first to have a centre of excellence. It became a thing for us, basically. So we started off with a small cross-functional team of experts. We focused on skills rather than a structure of a team initially. We focused on building out those use cases at speed. So we had a vision for where we wanted to be with our CDP. We had incremental goals. We structured a backlog of work. We engaged with different teams that we needed to deliver with. And we started to build the momentum. And the important thing was the Centre of Excellence almost evolved from that position. So it was really important for us to bring back into that centre all of the valuable knowledge, the experiences we've had, the positive things that had happened, and document as we went the value that we were creating, not necessarily just in terms of pound and pence, so value we were generating from customer outcomes and commercial outcomes, but things like, efficiencies we'd driven or where we created new data products and the enablement it had given to different teams. So we were looking for lots of different, softer metrics as well. So Centre of Excellence evolved for us and continues to evolve now as we scale even further beyond what I would say were marketing use cases into more broader engagement and more broader customer outcome-driven use cases.
And as part of that organisational hierarchy, how important has exec level sponsorship been to the project, and how did that help to support internal adoption of the tech? What do you think, James?
Yeah, so senior executive interest in a project is really, really important, not only as being a key sort of sponsor to open doors for you as you start to scale, but just for them to really understand has been crucial for us. So storytelling as part of your journey is really, really important. We find now, even now, some of our C-suite, and I won't mention a name, but still refers to some of what we do as magic, which I love. I think, you know, magic is a great thing. If you show great craft and you, behind the scenes, there's lots of great stuff happening, but to be able to use things like Telium Trace, you know, our chief exec loves Trace as a way to show what's happening behind the curtain. It's the kind of the Matrix moment or the Minority Report. He said it's like a stream of consciousness. So we can demonstrate and show, and we do that, you know, regularly with our sprints. We'll have, as part of our sprint review, we'll show what we've built. We'll explain the problems we've solved. We'll show the value we've created. So again, that storytelling, that narrative becomes really important, not only for keeping them engaged and willing to fund, you know, growth in your teams or you know, additional use cases you want to build out, but also unlocking the doors with prioritizing across other teams. So as we start to scale now at an enterprise level, you know, there are very much open doors, because let's face it, if you've got, you know, the leadership of your organization nodding along, it's a much easier conversation to have.
Yeah, and Gareth, you've done a great job of bringing C-level along on this journey, right?
Yeah, so it's very different for us, right? So Vodafone is governed by a group, and then you have your kind of local market entities. And I think for us, it was about getting the advocacy in the group right, and then going out to the markets next. So the markets, we're really led by the practitioners in the market that actually are on the ground and they know how to deliver the value. My neck is on the line for delivering the ROI because I fund the CDP program. So it's very different in setups, but getting the C-suite on board on group side was quite key.
Yeah. Martin, I wanted to ask you specifically for organisations that are looking to roll out a CDP in the near future, what internal skill sets do you think are essential to ensure a smooth implementation, and how might an organisation need to adapt?
I think that the three most important skills to have are the ability to build things from a technical perspective. So being able to like debug and analyze the technical setup to understand what might be wrong with it and what is needed to get things working. And also analytics skills, being able to look at data to see where you can probably improve or to evaluate whether or not this new thing that you build is actually doing what it's supposed to. Those are two really important skills to have, and luckily they often come in a bundle, so you can often find one person that can do both. And then you need someone who can champion your new tech and all the smart things that you're doing in the organization. And that is typically a different kind of personality you need to be able to do that. So typically those two personality traits are really important to get things moving initially.
Yeah, totally agree. And actually, James, have you got anything to add to that? Is there anything you think about that specific question?
Yeah, I think the analysing and being able to measure, you know, the measurement of the things that you're doing is so crucial. So you can get swept away by the focus to deliver some new things, carry on delivering, but being able to take stock and be able to measure is really, really important. And thinking beyond just the build. So, you know, yes, you'll need to set up and build and have the right skills in place, but you'll have to run. You'll have to start to get to a place where you need to you've put the solution in and you now need to run the products you've created, the services, the enablements you've given to other teams. So again, that's a really important part.
Yeah, and the measurement too, and that kind of leads me on to my next question. What measurable outcomes should organisations expect to achieve through adopting a CDP, and how can these outcomes be linked to broader business objectives? Gareth, what do you think?
Outcomes generate revenue. That's always number one. But I think with us, we run various different data programs through my team. And from a tactical perspective, I love the CDP because you have the ability to point it at different problems. And across Vodafone Business in the last couple of years, we've had several different pivots. And we've been able to point the CDP to address some of those issues, as well as driving the customer experience as well on the side. So I think we don't really stick to one core outcome. Revenue is important, but it's more the agility of the CDP where I think it comes into its own.
Yeah. How about you, Martin? When you first implemented Telium, what outcomes were you expecting, and then what was the reality?
Well, the first expectation was better data. Our data was a mess at the time, and it worked really well. And I think we are at a point now where if we went to our data science teams and asked them, what is the most important data set to you? What would make you most unhappy to lose? They would point to our online streaming real-time data that we get from our website because it shows customer intent, right? We have no other set of data that shows in a large scale what is going on in a customer's mind right now. And that's what data from our website does for us, and it's hugely profitable for us to have.
I think you used the phrase stream of consciousness before, which I absolutely love. And how do you measure bad data or whether data's got better? How do you do that?
We actually have a setup that sticks a flag in every single event as they tick in, saying whether or not it lives up to our standard or not. And we can report on top of that. And we can even generate reports that we can send to a product owner somewhere or to a backlog or a developer saying, you need to fix this and this and this and this, and then you're good. And we managed to improve our data quality from having 80% of our events having at least one error to below 10% now on some websites. So that's a massive improvement.
Wow. James, you went through a very formal process at the beginning to evaluate CDP. So what kind of measurable outcomes did you have from the onset? I
think, Gareth said it, you've got that rubber hits the road, right? So you've got to create a commercial return from the CDP. So all of the things around our journeys, those touch points, those moments that matter, the funnel where we say, actually, can we optimize throughout that funnel? And for us, that mitigation of third-party cookie loss has meant now, through implementing Telium, we've seen an 11% increase in observability of conversion events. So we're seeing richer, better quality, more granular data throughout our funnel, particularly bottom of funnel. We've gone from, at last touch basis, 5% of conversion events being attributed to some of those emails and campaigns we do to get people back into funnel to being now north of 30. So on a multimedia attribution model, we can now see the role of our own channels have massively increased. So that dilutes our sort of marketing investment somewhat. And I think the most important thing is that we've seen the value of insight, right? So we can look now at segment level to see the different performance, the way that they interact with our journeys. It's meant that we can start to create different types of journeys for different customer segments. And that's really important to move away from, I think it was Dan Schreiber at Lemonade talked about the tyranny of the average, right? So one size fits all average solutions, no one's ever really satisfied if you're delivering the average. So for us to get to more granular, more specific, more bespoke journeys, better understanding the funnel, more insight, more evidence about the actions we take, and being able to control the experiment into success and drive commercial outcome is crucial.
Finally, your top tips for other organisations that are about to embark on this journey, Martin?
Well, the first one would be probably don't overplan things. Telium is a very flexible tool. You can do a lot of things, and you can do them quite fast, oftenly. But if you overplan and fill a backlog with stuff for maybe a year or so, you lose the ability to adjust your course because you are tied down by a backlog, right? And also don't overplan in terms of building elaborate cost benefits and business plans and so on, because they are based on assumptions, and your assumptions rarely hold, right? So shift your analytical focus from analyzing the things you want to do before you do them to analyzing what you did after you have done it, and learn from that, and preserve your ability to adjust your course through learning from the things that you have done.
Gareth, your top tip.
Yeah, I would say to bring the organisation along the journey. I think the CDP is as good as the use cases that you feed into it. If you're innovating and talking across the organisation, you're going to find more of those sweet spots where you can actually drive some value from the product.
And James, bring us home. What's your top tip?
Assemble the Avengers, man. I mean, get the skills together that you need to solve some of these problems. Get that coalition of the willing, and just get something really focused. So we talk about mountain climbing, right? So you've got to have that view of where the top of the mountain is, but you don't climb it all in one go. Start, with base camp. So what's base camp 1? How are you going to get there? That planning horizon is short. It's what are we going to do in the next 3 months? And if you learn along the way that something isn't working, you pivot, you change, you backtrack, you try another ascent approach. So, but get the right people in the room, work with brilliant people at Telium, work with delivery partners, buy in some skills if you need it in the short term to build your team up. I've got some brilliant people in the room today, my team, that I'm really super proud of, that have done so much in the last few years and will continue to do so. But assemble the Avengers, get the skills in place, the rest will follow.
Yeah, I think to wrap up, I said at the onset, I don't think there is necessarily a one-size-fits-all approach with CDP, and you do have to have that kind of flexible mindset when you go and embark upon this journey. So thank you very much, James, Gareth and Martin, for sharing your insights with us today. If you are interested in exploring this further, there are some additional breakout sessions around this topic later on that I would highly recommend going and taking a look at. And that just leaves me to say thank you for listening to our session and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.